How do I look at the hedge funds? Yeah. So if I'm looking at hedge funds, I like to look at what popular funds are doing, right? I want to look at what, like I said, I'm not the most smartest person in the world, but these people have more. I have extensive years in the market, right? I have over 15 years in the market, but these people have even more experience in the stock market and they have more resources. They have billions of dollars under management, right? I don't have billions of dollars under management, right? So you're looking at what really smart people and really savvy people are doing during these times, right? So I like to see, are they buying my position? Are they selling my position? How much conviction do they have? You can see people, a lot of these funds are buying multi-million dollar positions and they might even be down 20, 30% down on their positions, right? But the difference between them being down 30%, 40%, right? They buy more, right? They are patient, right? They don't get emotional over these big falls in the market, right? They see it as opportunity, right? And that's ultimately what I want you guys to essentially have, right? Not every single year you're going to have crazy gains, right? You view the market as a multi-year thing, and you'll likely see your portfolios grow substantially, right? We've had a great past couple of years. Right now, at the beginning of this year, not so well, obviously, right? Now it's where patience comes into play, right? But yeah, going on to what I was saying, hedge funds, looking at how much they have into the positions, value in terms of these positions. A lot of people ask me what I look at in terms of value, what is high. I'm looking at 100 mil and above, basically, right? Those are likely your bigger funds and the higher conviction ones, right? Looking at this, I don't see a lot of people that I particularly follow. Bill Ackman is a significant investor, has 1.28 billion, right? Held this position. We'll see in the next week what a lot of people are doing with Amazon, right? They're getting, a lot of people are going to reveal whether they added, decreased, or sold, right? So you'll get a lot of more knowledge about what's going on with smart money, basically. But Bill Ackman's in buying this company here. David Tepper reduced slightly, has 500 million, so still a significant position. Amazon sitting at 199, is it at 120? So he's up still significantly and so forth, right? So I'll look at the value. So I'll fiddle with this, see what the biggest money are doing. So, right? So these are the billions, 7 billion, 6 billion. So in this position, you're getting like a multi-billion dollar position. You won't get this with majority of stocks, right? This is a big tech company like this. People are accumulating this stock, right? Average buy price, I like to see where they bought it at, and ultimately the latest activity. This is where later on, towards next week, you'll likely get big news about some people are buying, but I like to see conviction, right? So I'm seeing a 481% increase, $500 million position, 300% increase, $176 million position, right? So pretty high confidence in things like this, right? They bought this last quarter when the stock was sitting up here, right? When the stock was sitting all the way up here, right? Now the stock's down considerably. We'll likely see what they're doing. Chances are valuations down here, you'll likely get some buys here. I think I went over it with Adobe too. So things I'll fiddle with. What are like the big money doing, right? $1.49 billion position, slightly decrease. John Overdeck, 10% increase, 500 million, right? Dimensional, 600 million, kept their position basically, right? Dodge and Cox, high conviction, 8,500 million, right? So I'll go down these lines just to get to boost my thesis, boost my idea that, okay, this stock might be undervalued, right? I look at different things like Wall Street, they think the same thing, right? Intrinsic value, same thing. Even the lower DCF value, you're seeing the same thing, right? So these are things I like to see, right? Where's the Wall Street here? Yeah, latest activity. I want to see the highest buyers, Dodge and Cox, 500 million. Ray Dalio, of course. Jim Simons, 300 million, right? So you're seeing big increases, but you need to see the number value as well, right? You have big increase, but they still only hold like this one, right? Big increase, 100%, but only holds a $7 million position. Not as significant for me, right? So if I go through here, it's 75%. Okay, 300 million, above 100 million. This is pretty significant, and they're buying, right? So these are the things I like to see. Any other questions? I had a question about hymns. I'll go over that. Can go over Visa. So Visa, this position, you had to understand why the stock fell. I think most recently for what Trump said, but he was proposing a significant decrease in the interest rates for credit cards, right? And of course, that's going to affect these companies here. So it just depends on whether that comes into fruition or not. So that's going to affect it. But let's take a look at some of the valuations now. You have a 28 to 30 PE stock here. I wonder if we have 12 to 15% revenue growth on about 30%. Biggest thing about this, when you're choosing a company like this, you're choosing a company that's directly tied to just consumer spending, right? How does a company like Visa need to make money? The economy needs to continually grow. People need to continually use their credit cards so that they can make money, right? So that's a risk that you need to understand if you're buying a company like Visa, right? Intrinsic value. Not quite there. 33% overvalued. There is some decent level in terms of what Wall Street sees it. Lowest downside target is only at 330 as well. So looks relatively capped from a Wall Street perspective. This one will be really interesting to look at once new 13F filings come out, right? Because the stock's trading at relatively high on the technicals, decent rebound in the position, but it's a consumer spending stock with a little bit more risk, right? Yeah, popular funds. I'm looking at a lot of red you're seeing, right? John Overdeck decrease. Let's look at the big increases. Here, Israel Englander, 400 million, increased pretty significantly. Bruce Kovner, only a million, only a 5% increase, right? You're not getting much big increases because of how the stock was trading at, right? 2.5 billion though, 1% increase. And apart from that, just holding positions, right? Not huge level of conviction, but you'll likely see potential additions because the stock has made a pretty sizable decrease. Looking at fibs, sitting at golden retracement now. So looks good on a technical point, right? Fibs or fundamentals look okay, but there is risk with this stock here. Pretty big sells. Revenue growth is good, and valuations aren't providing much as well, right? So it's trading in line with how it typically trades, right? So for me, I don't see a lot of safety in that fact. So for me, it's not something I would size incredibly high or really look to own, at least for the long term, right? So valuations, maybe if it drops towards this low, maybe if it drops to a 27 PE, looks like the 27 is the lowest it's ever gotten. 25 might be something really worthy to look at. But now, when it's 29 versus 30.6, not a huge margin of safety from that standpoint, right? The stock probably needs to dip a little bit more. It's still overvalued by 30%. Maybe if it's overvalued 10, 15%, might be better to look at. Do you do dividend stocks at all? Was wondering. I do, but not a heavy portion of my portfolio. If I do dividends, I do it. I try to find stocks that are like for Comcast when it was trading down here, right? When stocks were trading down here, these are where I'm looking at these dividend stocks like Comcast. You saw me with UPS. It was a big dividend stock when it was trading down here as well. That's when I'll look at these dividend stocks. Right. But because of how slow they move, obviously they haven't been moving slow now. A lot of people have been flocking into these dividend stocks for safety. So they've been providing good upside in the overall market, right? But a lot of them run up pretty significantly. I don't want to touch them right now. CPI reports coming out tomorrow. How would the projections impact the market? Just basically that's inflation news, right? So more inflation news, so that'll impact whether interest rates are going to be held or interest rates are going to be decreased or so forth, right? Projections are nonetheless likely for holding until May, right? How the market will interpret that, nobody really knows, right? There's one side of the coin that views interest rates decreasing as bullish. There's part of the coin that views it as bullish, right? That's the uncertainty of the market. So that's why I try to focus more so on the fundamentals. These reports are going to impact the market for the short term, which will be great. If it prints really well, the market views it well, my stocks go up, great, right? But yeah, it could also affect it to the downside. But in the long term, it's really not going to matter. In the long term, interest rates are going to go down in the future, right? So there's that. It's those who are like day trading the market that really need to focus on things like that, gauge it, right? I'm focusing more on the fundamentals of these stocks, how much they're worth, because eventually they'll get to those prices, right? The day trading, that kind of stuff, that's the uncertainty with the market for the short term, right?